But let's start with Rudy Gobert to the Minnesota Timberwolves, which is one of the most interesting trades I can remember, point blank, period. What is going on in Utah, indeed, Brian Windhorst? Because, good Lord, we have got some wild decision making here in terms of the Minnesota Timberwolves with what they have done to acquire Rudy Gobert. They have given up 3 unprotected first round picks, 2023, 2025, 2027. They've given up 1 top 5 protected first round pick in 2029. They have given up Walker Kessler, who was the 22 overall pick this year in the 2022 NBA draft. They've given up Patrick Beverley and Jared Vanderbilt, both of whom are terrific high-level role player, impact players on the defensive end. It's a lot. It's a lot to give up for Rudy Gobert, and Rudy Gobert is a great player. Rudy Gobert is top 15, top 20 player in the league. He is a phenomenal defense unto himself. But Shamit, when you saw this, what was your immediate impact what was your immediate reaction that Rudy Gobert is going to the Minnesota Timberwolves?
So when the trade first broke, there was no concept of the amount of picks that were going to be involved. So my first thought was like, oh, cool. Minnesota's about to do something very interesting, and they probably got a good deal out of it because I didn't expect Rudy's market to be what it was, given that he has known limitations despite how good he is, and he has an unbelievable amount of money left on his contract. He had signed that $200 million, almost the full supermax capacity, like that what he was capable of signing. He got very close to that full amount. And so I was like, well, given his positional limitations, given his offensive limitations, his market should be pretty tepid. And Minnesota is taking an opportunity to lock in a very good team for quite some time, because they just locked in Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, young star in the making. Obviously, Jalen McDaniels, just someone that they prioritize there. But when the picks got revealed, and you said 3 unprotected picks and then a lightly protected pick in the future, and Walker Kessler, and obviously some role players that they had, I was like, they are insane. I mean, that type of return, it's straight up more than Drew Holiday netted. And the Bucks went all in because they were on the verge of a title, right? They were coming up short, and their expectations were to win a title. The Timberwolves, they were a play-in team, right? They were the 7th seed. They were a play-in team, and to go all in on that capacity on a player who also plays the position that your best player plays, and to have that kind of redundancy and that much money locked up in bigs for the next 5 years, it's crazy to me, because I think there's going to be legitimate moments where you can't have both of them on the court at the same time. And so if you can't have both of them on the court at the same time, then why did you invest so many assets? Could you have not done a proof of concept first, right? Like JaVale McGee signed a 3-year deal in Dallas. Obviously, JaVale's nowhere near anything that Rudy is, but can you have done a proof of concept first before leaning so forcefully into this construction?
Yeah. So I want to preface all of this of what I'm going to say by saying that I think Minnesota is going to be a very good regular season team.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be awesome in the regular season. Rudy Gobert, I think it's been like overblown that Rudy Gobert by himself makes you a top 10 defense. Utah, if I remember correctly, was like 12th or 13th this year in defensive efficiency. I would say maybe Rudy by himself makes you a top half of the league defense, as opposed to a like elite defense, top third, top quarter of the league defense. He is a great player, but you do need help around him. Minnesota had a good defense this year. I think they were also like right around the same range that Utah was. They were 12th or 13th in defensive efficiency this year. I think that what they did really well was communicate all year. They do a really good job of playing within the scheme that Chris Finch wants them to play. And for instance, someone like D'Angelo Russell got better this year defensively. I think that he was actually a critical point in terms of just you read anything out of Minnesota, they will tell you D'Angelo Russell's ability to communicate, to get guys in proper positions. It was really beneficial. this is on top of that. Like, I think that the fit of Rudy Gobert and Karl Towns on offense is really interesting as well. You can run ball screens with D'Angelo Russell and Rudy Gobert, and then have Karl Towns, on your second side. You can have Anthony Edwards running ball screens with D'Angelo Russell on your second side, right? It's a really interesting dynamic because of Karl's ability to dribble, pass, shoot as a 7-footer. Now, a lot of where Karl derives his value as a shot creator is in like the mid post and on the block. I know that a lot of people have pointed to the fact that like he played a lot of minutes with Jared Vanderbilt this year. Jared Vanderbilt does not, space the floor at all, really. So he's dealt with, having doubles coming at him because there's not a shooting threat at the 5 position, or there's not a shooting threat at the 4 position. So it'll be pretty similar. I'm a little bit skeptical of that, to be honest. I think it's a little bit different when Rudy is playing the 4 or Rudy's playing the 5 and has like a true center on him rotating over, as opposed to Jared Vanderbilt playing the 4 and has like, a more wing type player rotating over from Karl Towns. I think that that's going to be a pretty complicated, more difficult situation for Karl to post up with. He's going to have maybe a bit more of a good matchup defensively immediately whenever he's on the block because he's playing the 4, but you're going to have like the double team, the second help guy. I almost would rather have the second help guy being the 4-man than the 5-man personally, but I'm willing to say that I think it's going to work offensively in the regular season. I don't love this deal. I think it's an egregious amount to pay for a player that is not on your 2 best players timeline. Anthony Edwards, for as good as he is still not quite there yet. He is still a bit inefficient, and maybe he does take a leap. Like maybe Anthony Edwards is one of those like 21, 22-year-olds who becomes a top 15 player in the league immediately. I'm not quite there with Ant yet. As good as he is and as incredible as his explosive moments are, I think consistency on a consistent basis, he's probably more of like a top 30 player in the league. And Rudy is, speaking of that number 30 years old already. And the track record for 7-footers as they move beyond 30 years old is not ideal. And you can make the case that Rudy Gobert is a different 7-footer. He is someone who has a great reputation for keeping in impeccable shape and someone that could age really, really well. I think it's hard to age really well when you are naturally tall at the end of the day. Like when you're 7 foot tall, like the human body is not supposed to be 7 foot tall. And it's hard, I think, to age that way. So I wonder, for as much as Rudy keeps himself in shape, I just worry that as Rudy is declining a little bit, and as Karl and Ant keep ascending, does this trade impact them in the way that I think Tim Connolly is hoping for? Like, it feels like they're almost all in for this season and next season, as opposed to like when Karl Towns and Anthony Edwards will be great, which to me is in like 3 years down the track.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm not worried about that 2023 unprotected pick, right? And then possibly not the 2025. Obviously, it's a long time from now and anything can happen. But if you have Karl there, if you have Ant there, you should, be a decent team. And it provided Rudy's giving you stuff. But it's concerning to me that there's 4 years left on Rudy's deal. And the last year in 2025-26 is $46 million. Now, maybe they know something that we don't know regarding the cap jump. Like, let's say the new TV deal comes in, the cap jump happens, and they feel like on the back end of that deal, there's going to be enough relief. I think they already paid the tax. Was it last year or 2 years ago? and they missed the playoffs, and they're preparing to be a tax team for the foreseeable future, especially once you start getting into Ant's extension, which is I and that was weird.
Yeah,
Anyways,
I think we're back.
yeah, I think we're back. I like what they've done in terms of bringing in slow-mo. I think they needed wing defenders and
Yeah,
even locking in Prince at like a very modest price, just to have rotation caliber players. But it's just so difficult to wrap my head around committing so wholeheartedly to this pairing. I mean, I think they're going to be good. And part of it's funny because you kind of look at the connections there. Chris Finch pioneered sort of the two big offense when it was Jokic and Nurkic in Denver, right? And then he came to New Orleans, and then it was AD and Boogie, and they had the Twin Tower things going on there. And Chris Finch was also a pretty big part of engineering what was going on there. And Dell Demps was there too. And now Dell Demps is also in Minnesota. And so you have all of these little pieces coming together. And then next thing you know, Minnesota's trading all of these picks for another big. I agree with you. I think the offense is going to work. I think they're going to be pretty creative with it. I like some of the sets they'll be able to do, even if like Rudy's in the dunker spot, just having that like vertical threat to either just punish a smaller player on the offensive glass or just finish over the top of them. And Carl is really versatile. I just think that when you get to the playoffs and you face a team like the Clippers, or you face Dallas of last year, we can talk about Dallas in a second, I guess.
right.
But you face one of these teams that will space you out and will stretch you out. Who are you benching if you're not? And if you're not benching, are you trusting two of those guys to be spaced out in the way that they are? Are you playing a zone where you're just planting Rudy back there? I don't know. I'm so curious to see. Maybe they just feel like rebounding and size is going to be their strength, and they're leaning all the way into it.
Yeah, I think that's probably it. I would, for people who think that like you can just keep these guys on the court in the playoffs and it'll work, just point to Boston, right? Like at the end of the day, I think that's the situation people look at now. Like, oh, Al Horford and Robert Williams could stay on the court together and they made it work. Robert Williams, I don't want to like overstate how skilled Robert Williams is, but like Robert Williams can really pass. And like Robert Williams, he's not as effective overall offensively as Rudy, but I feel like you almost have to guard him out higher than Rudy because of his ability to like make plays with ball in hand a little bit more. And on top of it, both Al Horford and Robert Williams are incredibly smart, savvy, terrific defenders. Robert Williams is like a genuine impact defender. Al Horford is one of the smartest defenders in the NBA. I don't know if necessarily his athleticism allows him to, be an all defense caliber guy anymore, but Robert Williams certainly is that. Rudy Gobert certainly is that. Karl Towns is not that. So I think that the reason that the Al Horford, Robert Williams things work is that they can make it work on both ends of the court at a high level. They're complete players. Rudy isn't really someone who can punish you offensively in any way. Karl is not someone that is a great defender. I just have real questions if teams are going to be able to exploit them kind of on both ends of the court, exploit Rudy, on the offensive end when the opposing team is on defense, exploit Karl when Minnesota is on defense and the other team is on offense. And on top of it, this is a team now that like just does not have foot speed at all. Like you look across the lineup, D'Angelo Russell is not a particularly fast player. Rudy Gobert, Karl Towns front court is not going to be fast. Like there's just not a different way to say it at the end of the day. Like I think that Rudy moves really well for a center, but that
good,
front
like
court,
end-to-end speed, but laterally, no.
Right. Totally. Kyle Anderson, as much as I loved that signing, I think that might be the best value signing of free agency thus far. Kyle Anderson is literally nicknamed slow-mo. He's not the fastest guy in the world. D'Angelo Russell, not that fast. Like you look across the lineup and it's really like Jaden McDaniels and Anthony Edwards, and that's it. Like Taurean Prince, not some phenomenal, crazy athlete. Jordan McLaughlin, like a smaller guy, right? Naz Reid, another guy, like who will be the backup center, I would think, like slower guy, right? So good footwork, but slower guy. I worry if they have the requisite foot speed to keep up with teams in the playoffs when teams are just going to space them out. And that's what's going to happen. Teams are going to space them out. And we look at the way the modern NBA is going at this point. We need to talk about this too, like the fact that teams, for whatever reason, keep trying to go big right now. But the teams that have made it work in the playoffs have gone small. Miami is a team that goes small. Like Bam Adebayo plays out on the perimeter. Bam is like a 6'9" center, and then they have space around him. The Dallas Mavericks literally made their run this year playing small around Luka Doncic. Boston, their entire thing, like you can say that they play big, but their entire thing is like the intersection of size and skill and mobility. Like they try to find guys that are 6'5" to 6'9" who can move their feet and who can defend and do things like that. I don't see this on the Minnesota roster. I'm sorry to say it. Like, I don't like this at the end of the day. Like, I get it. I understand what Tim Connolly is going for, and I think they're going to win a lot of regular season games. I just don't know how this team doesn't become very exploitable in the playoffs at the end of the day.
Well, one thing, not to spend too much time on this team, but one thing I do want to talk about is like the Bucks did win like playing big, like they had size, right? And prior to that, the Lakers did have size, but what separates the play, the ability to play at that size is having the best player in the world, Giannis Antetokounmpo, who can do all of those things. Having LeBron James and Anthony Davis, two of the top 10 players in the world who can do all of those things. When Golden State was able to play Looney all the way throughout the playoffs, and Draymond, right? Like two non-shooters. Right. It's because they have literally the best shooters of all time on their team. And so like, right. I think where teams get in trouble is like, oh, well, my big gets ran off the floor. It's typically not happening defensively as much as it is happening offensively. And they're just hemorrhaging points on the other end because they just can't punish switches. And then I think with Utah, I think the conversation of like, well, Rudy got ran off the floor, like, partially true, partially is like they had terrible perimeter defenders that really kind of like left them out to dry. But what hurt them more than anything is like when it is 5 out, Rudy can't do anything about it. And so does Minnesota
can't punish teams on the offensive end is what you're saying.
Right. Does Minnesota have the offensive firepower between the Ant, D'Lo, Towns trio to make it happen? I'm skeptical. Obviously, that's something they're betting on. Maybe they have something up their sleeves in the future. But I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical. There's enough offensive like play creating talent there to make it work in the deepest rounds of the playoffs. Regular season, I think it'd be a pain in the ass to play against, and they're going to probably be like a 50-win team. Like they're going to be good.
Yeah, I honestly think they might win more than 50 games in the regular season. Like this is going to be an awesome regular season team.
Yeah, for sure.
To the other side, Utah, this is an incredible informed bet. Like these picks, these deals where you trade a star for draft hauls, right? The Paul George trade, the Drew Holiday trade, the James Harden trade, right? Like that's maybe the best example right now because essentially what the Rockets did was they made an informed bet that the Brooklyn Nets would blow up and thus they would get all of this value in the 2023 to 2027 drafts, basically. I think this is an incredible informed bet by Utah. It might not work, sometimes you can't predict the future, right? But it's a very good informed bet to bet on a team that now has two guys playing the center position as their best players. I think that what Minnesota's best hope is that Anthony Edwards usurps both those guys and becomes the best player on the team. But right now, the way that this deal looks, they have two teams who are, or two players in the same position that are, somewhat overlappable. I guess you can say Carl can play the 4, but I'm skeptical of that defensively. Utah now has a situation where I think that these picks are going to be very valuable. If I remember correctly, 2 of these picks, 2027, 2029 picks, come after Rudy Gobert's contract expires even. So this is a very good informed bet, in my opinion, by the Utah Jazz to get all of these assets, to get, Walker Kessler, who is an interesting rim protector for the style of play they've employed previously, to get Jared Vanderbilt, who's an incredibly versatile. Like, that's the thing. Like, Jared Vanderbilt, I thought, had a case to get all defense votes this year. He was like the rock that kind of held them together with his ability to fly over the court and help. I kind of love that acquisition for them. Like, I think that there's a chance they rehabilitate his value to where they might be able to move him for like a late first round pick, at the deadline if this team is not very good. He also might just help them win with Donovan Mitchell right now. Patrick Beverley, valuable player. It's a fascinating move for Utah that I think really could pay dividends for them. It's a fantastic move for them, regardless of our skepticism about Minnesota. Whether or not it's good for Minnesota, whatever, for Utah, it's definitely a great deal.
Well, I'm so curious where they go next. Like, they have a canvas. They have all of these assets. They netted a pick for they just made a trade with the Nets. Why am I blanking?
Yeah, for Royce O'Neal.
Royce O'Neal. Sorry. Yeah, they just netted a pick. So they have like six additional. Yeah, what's going on? But to me, it's like they can now go and get anyone they want, right? If that's what they want to do. So like, do you want to go get John Collins? You probably could do it. Do you want to put in a bunch of picks to get role players on decent contracts around Donovan Mitchell that allow you to then put it all together for another star down the line? You could do that. And so I think they're in a very interesting space, and Danny Ainge is clearly experienced with making these kind of trades and building from there.